Okay,
Go
these
ahead,
are
Bob.
Graham and Gramps memoirs.
Go ahead, Bob. Tell
Well,
about your childhood.
I started out as a child.
believe it or not, on one Saturday morning at 8:10, I came into this world unknowing to myself. But my mother and daddy were disappointed. They wanted a girl. But they got stuck and they suffered through it. The next thing that I remember in my life was 2 years later, Howard was born. We had moved from 623 Galloway to 625, and he was born just next door to the house that I was born in.
Is that Memphis?
Didn't get to go to the hospital, we had to stay at home.
I was in Memphis, right?
That was in Memphis, Tennessee, just a block and a half from the old church at Parkway and Poplar. Dunlap.
Poplar and Dunlap.
Dunlap and Park. And unbeknownst to me, just about 5 years later in a little city in Aquila, Texas, Fay was born. In the meantime, the only thing I remember is that all of us had scarlet fever. And they had a big sign up on the side of the house that said, "Scarlet fever, quarantine." They didn't tell you not to come out, they just made you. They put a big sign on your house and nobody would come near you. So we were isolated. And then I don't remember anything from then until going to school. My first year was in Gordon School. And the only thing I remember about it is kind of embarrassing in a way, because there were 41 students in that class, and if you were on the top of the row, you got to sit with your girlfriend. So I sat with my girlfriend, and I don't even remember what her name was. We sat in the same desk, and we had a spell down, and she missed a word and I got it, so I won. And there was 81 students in the class, and I remember just about 2 weeks later, I was out in the backyard playing. We lived on Palm Meadow Street, and I looked up and I saw the school principal coming down the street. And that meant bad news for me. So I ran in the house and hid in the closet. And a few minutes he knocked on the door. Mother went to the door and brought him in. And then she called, "George," and I didn't answer. "George Thomas," I answered. Time to answer then. So I came out, and he had brought a certificate stating that I had the highest grade of the 81 students in the first grade, which was, of course, a real surprise to me and quite a little honor for a 6-year-old. But
It was 41 students a while ago.
well, there's 41 in my class, but there were 2 classes in the first grade. So there were 81 or 82 in the 2 classes. And that was about the beginning of my life as far as I can remember.
You forgot what happened when you were 5 years old, but you decided.
That's right. Before I went to school, my dad and I were going someplace one night, and as usual, we ran out of gas. My dad had 6 kids. He worked for $4 and $5 a day at Ford Motor Company, and gasoline was 15 to 20 cents a gallon. So we bought it by the quarter's worth. Everybody that used the car had to put in a quarter's worth of gas. If they ran out, they were on their own. But we were walking down the street, and I told my daddy, I said, "I'm going to be a doctor, so I won't ever run out of gas when I get older." And then I don't know why, but I said, "And I'm not going to get married till I'm 26 years old." But I got married 2.5 weeks before my 26th birthday.
Blew that one.
And I kept on plugging away until I got to be a doctor. Wasn't easy in those days because Dad told me right offhand, he said, well, you're on your own, because with 6 kids, there's no way I can pay your way through medical school. But anyway, we had a good time, and then Howard began to grow up. He and Gilbert and Dan and I would kind of tussle with each other. The 4 of us would always be fighting about something, so it was 2 and 2. And then we had a place where we lived that we had a garage. Upstairs was just a big open place, and that was our playhouse. And we had rubber guns. What the kids nowadays don't know
Explain that.
what rubber guns are. But we had a gun about this long with a end of it on the pistol end, and a handle with a clothespin behind it.
You had to make your own.
Make our own, and we
Tell
got
how you made the,
Tennessee tire tube rubbers made the rubber bands.
you
tied knots in
slice the inner tube.
Around the circle.
And
Yeah.
cut them about so
Yeah, about
wide.
a half inch to 3/4
Mm-hmm.
wide.
So big, long,
Then
thick
you'd
rubber
knot 'em
bands.
and knot 'em and knot 'em, so when you shoot somebody, they'd feel it. And we used to jump out of the top of that garage, running around playing rubber guns. Then one day, Howard got a little bit too bossy, and he was trying to make me do something. I don't know what it was. But anyway, he threw one of those little trolley streetcars. They don't have those anymore. But they had end pieces that stuck out about that far
Made of cast iron.
on the wheels. And he hit me right in the top of the head with it. And it brought blood, and I looked at that blood, and I saw blood in my eye. So I grabbed him and got him, hooked him arm this way, and I was right up against the doorpost, and I whopped him like that, and his head hit that doorpost, down he went. Well,
Knocked him out.
didn't hurt him bad. It took me over. I got sewed up, and then I was okay.
He's never been right since, though, huh?
Next bad thing that I did in my life,
Among the many.
we were moving, and we just moving right around the corner from Park Avenue to Aubra, A-U-B-R-A Street. And in those days, we had coal oil stoves, kerosene. And they had wicks on them about that big around and about this long. And you light the top of it, and you had a way to roll it up and down. Well, I got a hold of one of those wicks and lit it, and I had me a long stick, and I was whirling that wick around on the stick, and it came off. And when it came off, Bernice was just walking out the back door of the house that we were moving out of, and in that thing went right under the curtain.
Oh.
Boy, the thing started forming, and I started pulling them down like this, burned my hands good, and that made me really appreciate my mother, because it burned my hands so bad that I couldn't sleep at night, and she'd sit there and talk to me and put cottonseed oil, linseed oil on them, and finally they got well, and then we all had a good time. But we had a house that was a shotgun house. How many of y'all know what a shotgun house is? You could get to the front door and shoot all the way through to the back without hitting anything.
That's a shotgun house.
And we had 3 bedrooms in there, one for Mom and Daddy, one for Bernice and Betty, and one for us 4 boys, all 4 on one bed. We slept across the bed instead of up and down. And on Saturday nights, there were a couple other boys that we knew that came over and spent the night with us. And I didn't do this, but they did. We didn't have enough milk because we had just had enough milk for our family. And they'd sneak out the window and go down the neighborhood and bring home 3 or 4 quarts of milk.
Oh,
That's when the dairy used to
Dairy
deliver
used to
milk
deliver
the
milk.
houses.
yeah, to the front doorstep.
But we had enough milk that way. And they did a lot of things that I wouldn't mention. But we finally moved to another house, and that house wasn't quite as adaptable to a bunch of kids. But we lived right next door to 2 pretty little girls, and our bedroom was here, and just about 50 feet from there was their bedroom on their house.
Uh-oh.
And so if we forget to pull the shades down at night, had a show, and those girls were sitting over there watching us, and we wouldn't realize it. They turned their lights out.
That's actually the way the story went.
Yeah, I
We
suspect.
changed it.
Why did you move from house to house so often?
Well, the only thing I can figure out is Dad couldn't pay the rent. I don't know. But we moved, let's see, my first recollection was on Greer Street. We moved from there to Park Avenue, from Park Avenue to Albra, from Albra to Park, back over on Park Avenue. We lived next door to a race car driver named Ray Dobbins. And he used to let us ride around his block in his race car. That was really something. Then I went to Messick School, and
Messick High?
Messick High, but I was just in the 6th grade. And it was right on the corner of Spotswood and I forgot the name of the street. But we had a good football team, and there was a guy named Dorsey that played on that team, and he was a good quarterback, but we didn't get much on that. But I remember one night later in life, I was skating, and I came in the house and the phone rang, and the girl said, "George, this is Virginia Sides. I was in the 1st grade with you." And I wouldn't believe her. But I said, "You couldn't be." She said, "Yes, I am." But I was so impolite that I said, "Well, I've got to go skating." So I went on skating. I never heard from her again.
Oh, my. That's a good thing.
Tell a story about the girl that fainted in the car driving by your house.
Well, this was on Lewis Street, and one evening, just about dusk, Gilbert and I were sitting out on the front porch, and I had just swallowed an ice cube, and it had got stuck right here. And I hollered, "Daddy, help!" And that thing popped out of my And just about the same time, I looked up, and Gilbert was taking off, running down the street. A girl was driving an open touring car. You remember the old open touring Fords? Well, and she had fainted in the seat. And that street came to a dead end and turned and went on down this way. There was a house right at the end of that street. And Gilbert and I started running as fast as we could. And Gilbert jumped up on the side of the running board just at the time to pull it out of gear. And he stopped it that far from the house.
Pulled the parking brake or a handbrake? Wow.
Then we moved out around the corner on Dunlap Street. We were out there one day and burning grass. And the next thing you know, the house was on fire. And Dad was over pulling on the boards to pull them off. And we all got a hold of it and pulled it off and got a hose, went down it, put it out.
Whoa.
So we were very lucky.
Why were you burning grass? You'd cut it and were burning a pile of it? Or?
We had the hose there, but we didn't
Why
use
were
it.
you burning grass?
Well, just, I don't know. get rid of it, I guess.
It had been cut?
No, it was growing.
Oh, so you
We
just,
hadn't, I don't think we even had a lawnmower.
okay.
They just burned it along.
Just burned it.
That sounds like a good idea.
And I remember one night, it was real cold, and I had a convulsion. I had a fever, I had a convulsion. And my mother was sitting out on the curb with me. And I was sitting there, and I said, what am I doing out here? And all of a sudden, I saw a bright light. And I looked up, and there wasn't anything there. I just had a convulsion. That's the only convulsion I ever remember having in my life. Well, I'll let you talk a while, Fay. My voice is getting bad.
Well, one thing first, while it's on my mind. Tell about your baseball team that almost won the city.
Well, that was a lot later. You want me to jump that far?
Well, yes.
Well, we had a church team, and Bonnie and Charles McClarty, Aubrey Alexander, a boy named Lewis that played with them, and another boy, can't think of his name right now, but we
In the Armor.
were a bunch of 16, 17-year-old kids.
Wasn't Claude Armor on that team?
Yeah, Claude Armour was on that team too.
Say who he turned out
Claude
to
Armour turned out to be commissioner and fire chief of Memphis.
be. Fire chief.
Fire chief, well,
Police and fire commissioner.
commissioner of fire and police. And he sat right behind me, and he'd put a roll of rubber bands around his pencil, and he'd pop me on the back of the head when he wanted. But anyway, Aubrey was an excellent pitcher. He could make that ball curve that far and drop that far.
Whoa.
And I was his catcher. And we were playing one night, and it was in the championship games. We were not the champions, but it was only 2 games from the championship. And we were out at the fairgrounds playing. And we were ahead of those guys 6-1. And one of their players came running around the bases, no, one of our players. And their catcher came running out there and grabbed him just like this and held on to him. Wouldn't let him come across home plate. But we beat the game, and so we were lucky. But the next night was the last night. No, that was that night that I was coming in home place, and the catcher was down like this, and he backed into me and ruined my knee. And so I was out the next night.
You didn't get to play in the championship game?
I didn't get to play in the championship game.
But then, wasn't there something, disqualification because Bill Alvarez was too young or something?
I can't hear for that.
Yeah.
Turn it off.
It's still